Hey everyone, it's Kong again, and as promised, I'm back with another update on my freebies-only account. Now, after releasing the last couple of silly little gameplay videos, I realized that I've never actually shown you any kind of in-depth walkthrough or information of this account. My very first freebies update that I released, when I first announced that I was doing this, was more like a slideshow of breaking down all the different characters I would have access to. So I figured the best way to start this video would be just to jump right into my roster and kind of show you the characters that I have available and what I'm doing with them. So right off the bat, as you know, the main characters that I'm going to be working with are just event freebies and story freebies. So starting with Matthew, and I've put a lot of work into Matthew just because I know he's one of the few characters that I'm going to be able to fully build right away. Like, he's not locked behind bonds or anything like that. So for that reason, I went ahead and bought his unique equipment. Controller points are a little hard to come by on this account because challenges are fairly difficult. So fortunately, I think I started this account like right when Lushiris Gate opened, and there was an event that gave a lot of controller points as rewards. So I don't have full SSR gear on all these characters because it's expensive to build all that up. So I ended up with Cavalry Matthew. I just picked questions randomly because I didn't really care which Matthew I had. I was glad that it was not Archer because I have Archer on my main account, and I wanted something different. I've got him with some gear, good enough. Ainz, of course, was the free SSR character from the event that was on when I first started this account. So as an SSR and as a magic user, he's actually super handy because I don't have other magic users who can be fully bond unlocked. So I've just got the SR gear on him. Now, Shibaraku is the free character from the most recent event, and he's interesting because I can use him in his infantry class. It lets me run Matthew not as a hero. And he's actually surprisingly beefy, so I gave him a decent full moon set upgraded. I also have werewolves on him, and they make him hit pretty hard, and he has pretty good sustain as well. Now Lance, if you'll remember from my Dark Dragon video, is my other kind of big DPS unit, which is hilarious to say because it's Lance. But I have him decked out with some decent stuff. I do have a Slayer's emblem. Azure Legend, not bad on him. Actually, I've been tempted to get his unique helm from the Secret Realm store. I'll talk a little bit more about the Secret Realm store when I get there. But as my other kind of big heavy hitter, it's kind of a temptation for me. He also has a faction buff if I ever need it, but the problem is amongst my main team, it's really only for him. Now Iris is obviously my main healer, and she's very close to being 6 stars now. Obviously, with the account being fairly new, I didn't get her shards the first time around, so I did have to shard her up after getting her in the rerun of her event. So she's built like a fairly typical healer. I'm not fully maxing this Goddess Left Hand yet because I know I'm going to get dupes, so I'll just happily wait for some dupes. Anyway, she's a great healer. Grenier, sadly, leaves a lot to be desired as a tank, but he is still in the main rotation because he has that Glory faction buff. Now, I'm not using Cherie a lot in day-to-day battles, because I just don't have room to slot her in. I'll usually bring Grenier for the faction buff, Iris for healing, Matthew for main damage, and then one of these 3 guys as my other damage dealer, depending on what I need. So Cherie doesn't often get slotted in, unless it's something that specifically requires someone who can fly around and sometimes kill 2 things. So if I'm using her and not Lance, I'll usually give her Lance's stuff, since her stuff isn't really built yet. Part of the problem with Cherie is that I don't have her attack bond, so she doesn't have the full slaying power that she would normally have. Almeida's pretty decent as strictly a debuffer and secondary healer, so I do put her in for some of the dragon fights. And the rest of the characters are semi-built, but don't get a lot of action. Freya, I'm building up kind of on the side in the hopes of eventually being able to do something with Origins, but she doesn't see a lot of action right now. Varna doesn't see a lot of action. Lifany I have used in a couple Timeless Trials fights that required me to use magic. She's actually surprisingly buff, even without having her attack bond, so she's someone that I'm going to be paying more attention to. Now, here's the thing that's kind of interesting about this account. Normally with real accounts, we kind of take for granted having our R units basically maxed for free, but since I'm not summoning, I'm not getting an abundance of shards for these characters. So Lewin, for example, only being 3 stars makes it much more difficult to use him for the traditional stuff you would think, like Thunder Dragon. Since I'm only doing a few friendship summons per day, and these characters are not common results in the friendship summon, normally you're just getting junky equipment and experience potions and stuff, it makes the growth for these characters a lot slower. So hard to rely on them to plug in. Lester's the one kind of exception because he actually has Gates of Fate that you can farm. Now beyond this point, you're going to see that through many of the voting polls that I've posted and the discussions that I've had on my community page, people have kind of almost unanimously said that I should be allowed to buy shards from the black market shop. Because I'm not summoning, they're made available there for purchase with in-game currency, so anyone who wants to buy them, it just takes enough patience and persistence. So following on that kind of advice from you, I have started purchasing shards for these SR characters as they come up. Now, as you can see, I'm not really close to being able to summon anyone, and I think when I do get 30 shards, I'll probably summon them just to get them added to the roster, but I still think that I'm going to refrain from building them or using them or unlocking the bonds that they help unlock, at least for the time being, unless I get really backed up against a wall and think that I'll need someone. But obviously for the distant future, someone like Narm is going to be essential for clearing Hugin and Munin in Ancient Beckoning once I get to that point. Other characters like Sophia will be extremely useful, not only as a healer in her own right, and probably as a pretty decent target for purchasing my next Secret Realm unique equipment, because she has a kind of semi-faction buff, which will allow me to boot Grenier. She also enables Freya to get her SP class. So without Sophia, I won't be able to do anything further with Freya. Now that's assuming I'll be able to beat level 70 Valkyrie anyway. But yeah, some characters in here will allow me to do some interesting stuff. So I am going to keep buying their shards, and I'll keep tabs on my progress with that as well. So that's my characters. I'll just walk through a couple of other little interesting things about this account. I've been kind of collecting and scavenging some of these like upgrade materials. Like for example, I have a bunch of dust, I have some Aniki material packs, I have some Surge Stones and some enchants that I haven't been using. Part of the reason for that is I'm just waiting for my characters to get better and for me to unlock some higher level content before I really settle into what I'm going to be using on them. Some stuff like this comes from the events, and that is super handy because I can't do the higher level Eternal Temples yet. So I've squirreled away some stuff for future upgrades. These hearts, for example, the Eternal Moon Splendors, for when I eventually can use them. This is just from Sunday Shop. Like, these have come up a few times in the Sunday Shop, and when I get one more, it's going to be handy because I'll be able to unlock someone's, let's just say Iris, for example. I'll be able to use my packs in my inventory and use the Sunday Shop Splendid Stardust to unlock someone's 6 slots and 3 C skill before I'm actually able to do it on my own merits of clearing those Eternal Temple stages. So, on a similar token, I also have some scrap SSR gear that I haven't really been working on yet because I want to, I could build 1 or 2 Blue Moons, but I don't necessarily have the resources to be able to max them and replace some of my good SR equipment yet. So I am sitting on that stuff, knowing that I'll eventually be able to build some pretty decent equipment for the characters that I have. Not too bad there. On the summoning screen, you can just see that I've been hoarding up my vouchers and not summoning anything yet. This number actually could be higher, it's just that I haven't really taken the time to advance through the story and the time rifts quite as far as I can. Once I have time to sit down, I'll be able to push that a little bit more. That's kind of an interesting, or a good time to segue into talking about how running 2 accounts actually takes a lot of time. Like, obviously I'm focusing more of my attention on my main account, especially since I started doing Apex a little bit more seriously last season. And then of course spending time making these videos as well. So with this account I did spend a couple good chunks of time really just logging in and doing dailies, and then every once in a while I'll push content a little bit. But there's definitely more room to grow on this account whenever I have time. One of the places where that's evident is in my Aniki training. I haven't really been pushing Aniki super hard. Part of the reason for that is I'm waiting to be able to clear the higher level Anikis more reliably so that I can auto-battle those and then get better materials. But some places I've been focusing on, for example, since Matthew uses bats, I have him with maxed out bats, so that really helps his damage. And I was talking about the werewolves as well. So I have my werewolves at 9 out of 10, so Shibaraku is actually quite a force. And that's kind of the main highlights. I think I have my phalanx up there quite a bit as well, just to try to desperately give Grenier some survivability. So in my bonds, this is where we start to run into one of the main limitations of my characters. So as I mentioned, Matthew is actually able to be fully unbonded because he doesn't have any other characters locking him up. Same with these event characters. So Iris is the first person that I actually focused on getting to 100% using materials that I scrounged from various events and things. And the reasoning for that is because I wanted to make sure that I had a really good solid healer. And I know that Iris is going to be my main healer probably for the life of this account, because there's no way for me to get the good SSR healers who might replace her in a PvE scenario. I'm never going to have Tiaris, I'm never going to have Liana, I'm never going to have Florentia, I'm never going to have Rosenseal, so I know it's going to be Iris, so I wanted to make her as powerful as possible. Now, someone like Lance, who you know I've been using a lot, now this is an interesting thing, right? I can't unlock his defensive bond without Narm, and I can't really get Narm without buying shards in the black market. So Lance is kind of doomed to be a glass cannon-y type character, which is fine for him, like he is a DPS, but where it really starts to hurt is with characters like Cherie and Liffany, where the bond that's locked out is their attack bond, it's their damage dealing bond. So I've been prioritizing the characters that I can unlock more, because they'll be characters that I'm able to make as buff as possible. So Freya's an interesting case, because to get her SP path started, I do actually have the Heart of Desire. I got it from the event, figured I might as well hedge my bets. All I need to do is get her Heart Bond maxed, which I can gradually do through the low-level Eternal Temples that I've cleared, and also the daily map events that give you some of these mats. I will be able to get that up to 10 out of 10 and start work on this SP class, but then it very quickly becomes fairly difficult for an account like this to progress further in that SP quest line. Like, I need Memory Essence, which I don't have available to me yet. I need to spend a lot of controller points to get her equipment. I need to spend a couple rune stones. Like, there's just a lot of material investment. Not to mention doing some of the hard fights that my account will have some trouble with. So it's just interesting to see how bonds can hold my characters back. I mentioned Grenier not being a satisfactory tank. That's because he can't unlock his defensive or his attack bond, and thus he can't unlock his heart bond, which is where so much of your bulk is hidden. So he's very squishy for a tank. So I mainly try to take a couple hits with him, do some barb damage, and use that Legion of Glory faction buff. So just a quick glance through my secret realm. As I mentioned, I haven't been pushing Aniki's too hard. I do have at least some SR levels unlocked, so, you know, I can come in. I've spent the last couple weeks just looking for the training fields where I didn't have the silver books, like the silver unlocks all finished, and just tidying those up so I don't need to worry about keeping any of my silver mats anymore, so those go to the Sunday shop now. I do have all my training schools done up to the max level, which is fairly easy. And I don't have as many characters that I need to level up, so getting experience potions is eventually not going to be important. For Goddess Trials, you saw that I cleared the 65 Dark Dragon. I also have the 65 Fire Dragon done, but the rest of the dragons aren't done quite to this level yet. But they will be. I'm making good progress on those. Bonding Realms, I have all the 65s done, so I'm going to be working on the 70s for the next couple of weeks. And Eternal Temple, I do have the lowest level of all of them cleared. I probably can do the 60s. The tricky thing with this account, you know, it seems like 60 should be fairly doable with a level 70 account. The tricky thing is the limitations of the characters that I have to use. So, Yeles, Strat, and Protagonists for Phoenix. Let's just take a look at what I've got, right? So these are the characters that are on faction for Phoenix. Matthew, Shibaraku, Lance, good. Almeida, not too bad. That's 4 characters. Then we throw Iris in there off faction. And I don't have a lot of choice in how I build my team for that battle, right? So I don't have a lot of kind of strategic options available to me. I just pretty much have to hope that these characters are powerful enough. So that's going to be the limiting factor for my Eternal Temple clears. I am going to make them happen, though. It's just a question of making sure my characters are powerful enough. The other interesting thing to mention in here is Timeless Trials. I've pushed a little bit. I should be able to push higher than this. But one thing that I learned today while doing some of these maps is certain time laws can be pretty tough for an account with these limitations. This is the one that stalled me out today. When attacked, damage dealt increases by 100%, and the damage you take decreases by 50%. Since I don't have a tank, you know, Grenier is really my only kind of usable tank. Freya's pretty usable. She has a faction buff for a couple characters I don't really use. But Grenier, I want those Legion of Glory faction buffs for Matthew and for Lance especially. But normally the way to deal with a time law like this is to let the enemies crash into your tank, and then when they're weakened you can kind of finish them off. Enemies can't crash into Grenier, because he goes down. So my strategy for Timeless Trials is really to kind of kite and pick off enemies one by one, or maybe debuff them with Ainz, and then go in and kill enough of them with Matthew and Lance that their retaliation doesn't hurt me enough to end the match. But this time law, I can't do enough DPS early or fast enough to take down the enemies before they overwhelm Grenier. So this is where I'm done for this week, and next week I just have to hope that I end up with better time laws. Anyway, I'm persisting with it. Not much else to mention in here other than that I have put up a couple just really token basic low scores on the various Ancient Beckoning bosses just to get the rewards. So I get a couple little AB stones sent to my box every cycle, and I use them to chip away and make some of my characters a little bit stronger. Definitely not putting up any competitive scores in there yet, but like I said with Eternal Temple, I am going to put together some good teams for those as my team gets more and more powerful. So I think that's about all I have to show you for this account. We went through my characters, we went through kind of my equipment and my bag, we went through my training field and my bonds, we went through some of my progress. The only other thing that's really worth mentioning, I guess, is Arena. I haven't touched World Arena on this account, I'm not going to lie. And AI Arena doesn't really matter. I can't get in and show you that right now. But this is a newer server, so progress in the AI Arena has not been difficult, even for my account. You know, you just do fights against people you can beat and get your score up and get rewards there, so nothing really special about that. Yeah, so I think as far as goals, that's the only other thing I would have to talk about. In the first video, I showed kind of a roadmap of the rest of the year and the possible characters that we could be getting. We should be getting some Alfred Shards from one of the events coming up. Also possible that we'll be getting some free Hein Shards. when his SP class is released, which would be a really nice way to fast track getting another good magical character, but more importantly, someone who unlocks a few very important bonds for me. I believe Hein unlocks the attack bond for Cherie, so I could start using her more seriously. And he also unlocks the defensive bond for Grenier, believe it or not, so that might help turn Grenier into a usable tank for a change. Oh yeah, the one other thing I'll show you is the Secret Realm store. So just a very, very quick little discussion of some of the options I have in here. Now, the main three things that I'm considering. The first one, as I mentioned, was Lance's Crown. And this is not super special as a piece of gear. The main thing that makes this enticing is just the fact that I use Lance so much. So when I put him in mixed forces, so if I have him as a cavalry unit, I can use Griffins. If I have him as a flying unit, I can use Heaven's Guards. They give me an extra damage boost, which is always welcome for a DPS unit, especially since I have his attack bond maxed. Second option I would be considering would be Sophia's robe, if I do get Sophia. As I said, just because she gives so many stat boosts, that I'd be able to use her as a kind of replacement faction buff for any of the weird various and sundry characters that I'm using. And who was the third option? I've already forgotten. Oh, I remember. Let's see if I can remember what it actually looks like. Yeah, Lifany. So, after using Lifany a bit in Timeless Trials this week, I was fairly impressed with the amount of work she was able to put in, even without an attack bond and a faction buff. So, Lifany's equipment is actually fairly interesting because it opens up some cheese possibilities of being able to use aim to move in, and then the move again after acting that this piece of gear gives you. So you can kind of pick away at enemies and then move back to safety, which is especially useful for my kind of bait and switch or hit and run style action that I need to use without a tank. So those are kind of the top three choices for me. I haven't really decided yet, and I'm not going to commit. I'll go back in there. I'm not going to commit because I don't have tons. By the end of this Wataru event, I'll probably have around 200 challenge coins or challenge points. So I don't want to overcommit too early until I know exactly what my plan is going to be. Especially if I'm going to eventually try to get Freya's, or maybe eventually Hein's SP class. Actually, I can't do Hein, can I? Because he needs a character I can never get. But if I'm going to try to do Freya's SP class, then I'm going to need all the tokens I can get here. So that's kind of a holding pattern there, a wait and see, and just slowly and gradually collect that stuff. But I don't really need unique gear. It's just something that will help in the long run. So yeah, that's everything I have to say about this account so far. I will be posting more battle clear videos as I get to them. So I'm just mainly spending most of my time building up and slowly improving my team until the point that I can overcome some of those more difficult challenges. It'll be interesting as I get a little bit further in Time Rift and story, and I can start unlocking the potential of some of these characters. Like Matthew at 6-star will be great. And getting Angelica, if only for her time buff for these characters, since I'm going to be using so many free event crossover characters, Angelica could be an interesting add for my team. So yeah, that will be about it for now. Keep your eyes peeled for some more of those challenge and battle clear videos as I get powerful enough to do them. And I'll probably do another one of these kind of sweeping updates, maybe a couple events from now when I have a couple new and interesting characters to talk about. So yeah, thanks for coming along with me on this weird journey, and thanks for your support and enthusiasm for this kind of sub-series. I find it very interesting and pretty fun. Like, it is challenging, but it's the fun kind of challenge that I like, that makes you kind of try different things and experiment with different... Like, I wouldn't be using Shibaraku in my main team, but he's really powerful and a useful character in this team, so it's fun to be able to have the chance to do that without feeling like I wasted resources that I actually want for my main account. Hopefully this has been fun for you as well, and Maybe if worse comes to worse, it actually inspires some of you to waste your own time doing something similar. Don't worry about it. If not, you can always keep your eyes on this to get that out of your system a little bit. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for all your support, and I'll catch you in the next update. Happy Langrissing, everyone.